I've had this clip saved to my hard drive for almost a full year now. It's the only clip that I have left from my initial playthrough of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. It's probably the single most memorable experience of that entire expansion, in my opinion, was encountering the Abyssal Woods for the first time. You can kind of tell that something is off in the lead up to this area. You don't necessarily know that you're going to end up here. You're just diving into catacombs like you have 20 or 30 times before, and at this point you've kind of worked out that there's a rhythm, a routine, a formula to these catacombs. We generally enter and we find a door that is sealed closed. We venture into the catacombs, we find a lever which we pull that opens that door, leading to some sort of a boss encounter. Typically, we're rewarded with some spirit ashes, and the room in which we fight the boss in is typically lined with these pillars, these columns. At the back of the room, we can typically see some overgrowth of tree roots, and there's resin and sap that's pooled and collected here. There's even this convenient teleportation circle that'll send us back to the beginning of the catacombs if we so choose. But here, after delving further down than we ever have before and encountering the boss fight, we're not in a room filled with pillars, but we're in some sort of a tainted garden, almost like a graveyard. We're outside, it seems, but how? And as we press further, we're given these warnings telling us to turn back before it's too late, that if whatever is down here sees us, that there will be no escape for us. The entire atmosphere shifts in a moment. And typically, when you find yourself in the dark, you'll turn on a lantern or you'll pull out a torch, and I found myself instinctively turning my lantern off and trying to hide in the shadows from whatever it was that was patrolling these lands. And it stands in such stark contrast to the rest of our experience, because up until this point, we've been conquering the lands between on our quest to become the Elden Lord. Heck, some of us might even be the Elden Lord by the time that we come across the Abyssal Woods. And so it's so fascinating to me that the confidence that I had grown to appreciate, the confidence that led me into battle time and time again, even after being defeated multiple times, that confidence was somehow shrunk down so small that I was now cowering at the mere sight of oversized vermin with glowing eyes. Rats that I have certainly killed before. But they still somehow instilled some kind of a fear in me. And I also found it incredibly fascinating how this form of art could almost, in a way, be self-referential to something that may be familiar to the player. It's a bit of a stretch, because to assume that the player has played one of the previous games before, one that is an exclusive to specific console, is a very interesting choice. But the connection that it made and the unsettling fear that it provided were so perfectly well done and well executed. It's such a fascinating thing. And it really, in many ways, to me, is a magic trick. It's a magic trick that the developers have been able to pull off. And I use that analogy because, like magic tricks, once we know the inner workings of how the trick is performed, well, it's no longer as special. The illusion has been shattered. And the same can be said of the Abyssal Woods, because once we really have the time to explore this area and take in what is here as well as what isn't here, it can kind of shatter the illusion. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just what happens. It's kind of like watching a scary movie. Once you've watched it once, well, you know what to expect. You know when the jump scares are going to happen, when you should look away. Does that make it any less engaging? Any less important? Any less memorable for us as the audience? I'm not sure if it does, but I do think that it's fascinating that when it comes to this art form of a video game, that we do see some kind of criticism for the fact that we can't necessarily re-experience what we did the first time through. Once we know that this is really, at its core, just a big, dark, open area with not a lot for us to find, but that the point of it being so dark and so empty is to build the atmosphere, the environment, the experience that we had that stuck with us. It was all in service of that. It wasn't about the collectibles and picking things up along the way. It was about that feeling. Sometimes it's not about what we take, but what we take away.